Madam Toastmaster, fellow absent Toastmasters, and even more absent guests. It's all about appearances. There are three things that I want to talk about today in terms of presenting a speech in an online presence. First is visuals. Second is body language. And the third is speech, that is, speaking. So let's talk a little bit about visuals. Now, the first thing is how you present yourself on screen. And this is very important. And I'm talking now as a photographer, therefore it's what, as a photographer, I perceive to be the most appealing way of presenting yourself on screen. And that is to have your eyes, and I'm going to come close to the screen for this, to have your eyes at about a third of the screen. So where my eyes are now. If you're down here, well, it looks very strange. If you're up here, it also looks very strange. So the ideal is to be about 1/3 of the way down from the top for your eyes. That is the most appealing way of presenting yourself to camera. Now, it doesn't matter whether you are far away from the screen or close to the screen. And even when you get close to the screen, as long as your eyes are on the third, it doesn't matter if you cut off the top of your head. What's important is where the eyes are, because the eyes, as you know, are the window to the soul. And when we're listening to people talking, generally speaking, we're looking at their eyes. Now, if you're on a mobile device, this becomes a lot more difficult because mobile devices, when they put up on their stand, tend to be at an angle, and we tend to put it on a desk so that we can not hold it in our hands. Okay? So what do? Well, we can lift it up and hold it in front of us like that, but that obviously is going to take, it's going to be a bit awkward and your arm will get too heavy. So the ideal is to prop it up somewhere in front of you, maybe on a book or something, leaning against something so that at least it's at near enough towards eye level. It doesn't matter if it's all the way there, but at least it's almost up to eye level. That means that we avoid this thing of seeing somebody at this angle, looking up their nose, which is not very attractive. Now, the third thing is background. I'm using a virtual background here. And because it's a virtual background, I can choose whatever background I like. Now, the reason that I've got this background, obviously, is par excellence Toastmasters, but also it's a very plain background, which means there's no distraction to the audience. I could put a background up with, let's say, a photograph. Let's see if we can find one quickly. Choose a virtual background. I could put something like this, say. It's a very pretty background, but that might detract from my audience. Of course, what you could do is to have a background which is related to your speech. Then maybe it wouldn't be quite so distracting. I'm going to put it back to par excellence because I don't want to distract you. Now, that can be done through Zoom, and all it requires is a green cloth. And as you can see here, as I put my hand over it and I shade it, you can see there's a lot of green there. And it's just a green cloth that's hanging. Next thing is lighting. We need to be able to see your face. Now, I've actually got my lighting maybe a little bit too high. I was playing around with it before the meeting and I've slightly overdone it. Also, I'm looking at my the light that I'm using to light my green screen to get an even lighting on the background. And that's also casting some light on my face, which is something that I should try to avoid. However, it's better that than seeing somebody too dark. So if I turn this light off, which I shall now do, find the switch, I can never find it. Now, apart from the fact it's lost my background because the color's changed. You can see my face is much darker. It's actually not too bad. I'm surprised the camera is picking up better than I expected. But I'm going to put the light back on again. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, which is body language. Now, when you're sitting in front of the screen, very often we don't see much of the body. If you're close to the camera like this, then we don't see hands, and you actually have to put your hands up high in order to be seen, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this standing up, because you can see a lot more of my body, therefore you can see a lot more of my body language. And basically, it's the torso after the head where the body language is generally expressed. But that means if you are seated, and we're only seeing you from, say, about here to here, facial expressions become so much more important. We don't have too much vision of the hands to be able to express ourselves, so we're only going to be using facial expressions. So we can go a lot more overboard on facial expressions to try to match up with our speech, and of course head movements as well. The third thing I want to talk about is speech itself. And there's two ways of giving a speech. No change there. One is to read it, and the other is to give it from memory. How can we read a speech and yet not be seen to be reading? Now, there are techniques to this. And I'm going to sit down again. So I want to be a bit closer to the camera. So I want you to be looking at my eyes and try to decide whether I'm looking at the camera or looking at the screen. Now, in actual fact, I am looking currently about, 4 inches below the camera, and I'm looking at my notes. But I position my notes exactly underneath the camera so that with a bit of luck, even though I'm looking down, hopefully when you're looking at me, it looks as if I'm looking at the camera. Well, at the moment I am actually looking at the camera, so it's not cheating. So in summary, it's all about appearances, it's about the visuals, it's about how you position yourself on the screen, it's how you deal with mobile devices, how you deal with the background. It's about body language and making more use of the body that is visible to the audience. And it's about speech and how you present your speaking and how you make it look to the audience as if you are looking them in the eye. Madam Toastmaster.